Remarkable. So we've talked for a little while about how tort law has grown and evolved and how it's under attack and how lawyers are important and must pick up and carry on the flame to preserve and protect people's rights. And that leads to law school. So at this time, I would like to introduce you Timothy Fisher, who is the Dean of the University of Connecticut School of Law. Previously, he had taught there as an adjunct faculty member while spending 35 years in private practice, including being a partner at a major regional law firm. He has practiced and published in the fields of ethics, alternate dispute resolution, commercial transactions, construction law, family wealth disputes, and municipal law. Now he leads and guides the education of young men and women, and some older men and women, in their journey to become attorneys. He's a graduate of Yale University and Columbia Law School, chairs the state's Commission on Judicial Compensation, has served on the Governor's Commission on Judicial Reform, and was recently president of the Connecticut Bar Foundation. We are honored to welcome him. Ladies and gentlemen, Timothy Fisher.
Well, thank you, Richard. It's a great honor to be part of this group, recognizing the opening of this great new museum, a museum which is truly a gift to this community and to this country from a true hero, Ralph Nader, and we thank you for that. For how many of us would not be alive today or would not have our health were it not for the movement that he started, half a century ago, roughly. And I'll tell you that this event has a special importance for those of us who are in law schools because we view ourselves as the guardians of the future of the rule of law. And the special importance of the doctrines we learn here and the messages we learn are what we need to take back. And in fact, I'm very proud that we have a group of our students, both domestic and international students here today. Could you guys raise your hands? Where are you? Way to go. Thanks for coming. So there's a few thoughts I'd like our students, but everybody, to take back with you about the importance of tort law. And it has to do with three things: its fundamental importance, its flexibility, and its power. Fundamentally, tort law grapples with the deepest and most ubiquitous questions about life and society. What duties do we owe each other? And what should be the consequences if we harm one another? And tort law has developed doctrines such as duty, causation, culpability, and damages that pervade the system of law and pervade our lives. And in fact, what we have learned in legal education is that we have both the duty to teach the most advanced applications of those doctrines, but also those concepts find their way into almost every other area of law. Especially in the civil field, you need to come across causation, you come across damages constantly. All that has its home and its origin in tort. Tort law is also flexible. These core concepts have been able to be applied in numerous new situations, and as society changes and technologies change, we find that tort law has been able to find its way alongside and remain a good guide of how to assign responsibility when bad things happen. And third, the power of tort law arises thanks to its availability to private actors, to brave plaintiffs like Mrs. Villard, and skilled and diligent lawyers like Rick Silver and the others that you've heard from, and many of whom who are here in this office, are able through skill and effort to move ahead of political will, to move ahead of governmental institutions, using the civil trial, that greatest engine of truth ever devised, to reach through and see the causes and origins of harm, where they're deeply buried inside complex and large organizations. Well, I'm in a quandary because I know I'm the last speaker standing between you and Patti Smith, and every sentence fills me with guilt. So I want to close by picking up on a point that Greg Kafuri just made about The irony in which we find ourselves today, which is that so many new lawyers are having trouble finding rewarding work, and yet the vast majority of Americans can't afford a lawyer. Where does this market failure come from? We in the law schools have a paramount duty to identify the barriers that are standing between our people and justice, and finding ways to build new systems that reach through that. For without that, the rule of law cannot have its full meaning if it's not available to the poor and the vulnerable as much as it is to the rich and the powerful. For examples abound throughout the world of places where there are beautiful laws on the books and yet they mean nothing in the daily lives of citizens. And we in this country are at a risk of slipping into that situation for important parts of our population. That must be stopped. We have to turn that around. We must find a way to make sure that the law is as available to everybody, and that this is a country ruled by law and not by the whims of the rich and powerful. Thank you.
It now falls to me to introduce a great man to you. Ralph Nader, founder of the American Museum of Tort Law. In 1965, he created a revolution with the publication of Unsafe at Any Speed, which really created the field of automotive safety, the book that led to congressional hearings and the enactment of legislation and automobile safety laws passed the following year. Since then, Ralph Nader has been responsible for at least 8 major federal consumer protection laws, the recall of millions of defective motor vehicles, access to government through Freedom of Information Act, and thousands of lives saved. He has built, with the help of others, many national groups, a network of citizen activist groups, all with the aim of protecting and preserving citizens' rights and remedies and making society better. He founded Public Citizen. He is involved with and led to the creation of the Center for the Study of Responsive Law. He has galvanized a population of consumer advocates, citizen activists, and public interest lawyers who in turn have led to the creation of their own organization. He was named by Time and Life magazine as one of the most 100 influential Americans of the 20th century, and by the Atlantic magazine as one of the 100 most influential figures in American history. He has worked his entire life to empowering citizens, creating responsive government sensitive to citizens' needs, and defending the United States civil justice system. It is his vision of this museum that has gathered us all here today. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my very great honor to give you Ralph Nader.
Well, thank you very much. I really didn't urge all these encomiums. They're very kind people. People who know me know that to be true. There's nothing special about me, except I grew up in this town, and I didn't like bullies. And I would see a 5th grader beat up a 3rd grader on the way home from school, and I just couldn't stand it. And I didn't set aside either. I paid a price once in a while. And I remember once in the 8th grade, as we were rushing out after the school day was over, and my friends made a bad comment about the plain looks of a girl in our class. And this girl was with us from 1st grade. I mean, almost 8 years. And she's extremely friendly and just a great little girl. And they called her a pig as they rushed out. They're fresh with their puberty. they commented on her plain looks. And I looked at her and she just completely collapsed visually. These were her friends. They called her a pig as they rushed out, laughing. So I walked home and I'm trying to sort this out. And I got home and I told my mother about the story. And she said to me, "What did you do about it?" And the next day, I called them out when I got back to school. So I had a lucky choice of parents. And that's where all this starts. It's the way you're brought up. If you develop a cultivated sense of injustice, you will have a sense of justice. If you're tone deaf to what happens badly for people, no fault, if you don't get upset a bit when you see someone pushed around, excluded, underinsured, thrown out of work, exposed to life-disabling hazards, how can you have a sense of justice? And unfortunately, the entertainment world that we live in 24/7, especially for young people with that gadget in their hands, does not sensitize them to injustice. It desensitizes because they see so much violence in the video games and the movies. It's hard sometimes for them to distinguish that from the real thing. But having a cultivated sense of injustice is an intellectual endeavor. In a complex society, it's not that easy. It's easy if someone pushes someone walking across the street with a limp and throws them down. That's pretty easy to render the verdict on that one. But when you're dealing with the crushing impact of raw power on international law, on our domestic law, on constitutional law, the function of law is to discipline raw power. It's to channel raw power. It's to destroy, sometimes, raw power. It's to take raw power and put it into a different pathway so it can put its best foot forward instead of its avaricious foot forward. We've tried to do that with the insurance companies on loss prevention, for example. I think our educational system minimizes the students. They don't maximize the students. It's rote learning, it's repeated multiple choice testing. It's basically almost a waste of time. 12 years. Elementary school, high school. They don't learn and they don't experience the major skills they must have to have a happy, productive, and safe life. They don't learn how to buy things and how not to buy things. They don't learn how to do their homework in order to vote intelligently and actually vote. They don't learn anything about the tax system. They don't go to small claims court to see how to use it as students. They don't know much about their own community, their own local history. It's almost embarrassing just to take a survey of young kids today and just ask them about their local community history. Historical societies receive few visitors, but they've got the gadget. And as elders, we have got to start putting an arm around the shoulders of our younger successors. We simply can't say, well, we don't know about this technology. They can be free to do what they can do. There is such a thing as guided wisdom. There is such a thing as people inheriting from their own grandparents and parents a connectedness that must be extended to an increasingly disconnected younger generation. We have to be assertive, good ancestors. We have to be good ancestors. We're not out to pasture after age 65. In a way, that's when we're liberated. We don't have to worry about the boss. We're free to exercise our wisdom and to raise the next generation so that they are not raised by corporations and commercial values that undermine parental authority and market bad things like junk food and junk drink and unsafe products to kids at age 7, 8, 9, 10, before the addictive industries get at them. At the museum, you'll see how the tort system brought the tobacco industry to heel. It wasn't the legislature. It wasn't the executive branch. They were cowed by the tobacco industry and all its money and politics. But again and again, failing, finally succeeding, trial lawyers broke through. They spilled out the ugly guts of Philip Morris and R.J. Reynolds. They got the conscientious whistleblowers. They got on 60 Minutes. They got on into the New York Times. And then the Food and Drug Administration began waking up, and some members of Congress. Again and again, one plaintiff lawyer with one plaintiff can put forces into motion to make us all safer. And why is that? Why is that? It's because that courtroom is still open. It's because we have a right of trial by jury. It's because it's constitutionally protected. It's because it's open to the press. No closed tribunals, as we have with our trade agreements. No closed tribunals. Verbatim transcript. People cross-examining through their attorneys to find out the facts, the conditions, what happened. The jury determining the fact under the legal instructions of the judge. And then the appeal. There is nothing in our other branches of government that come close to this refereed accountable system. It is under attack. It's often grotesquely stereotyped by insurance companies and by companies like General Electric, General Motors, General Foods, the defense industries that are let off when they provide defective weaponry for our soldiers under some sort of doctrine that immunizes them for all practical purposes, with some exceptions. Let's face it, if we don't turn it around, who's going to turn it around? If we, the people, don't turn it around, who's going to turn it around? Our Constitution doesn't even use the word company or corporation. It doesn't even use the words political parties. Why are they ruling us? We start with the profession, the legal profession, that has had a lot of shortcomings. They have allowed erosions of the civil justice tort system in pretty outrageous fashion. They're sort of technical phrases that lawyers understand, but you know what they all amount to? They say to you, if you're wrongfully injured, you're going to have to go over a lot of hurdles. You're going to have to delay. You're going to have to possibly lose. You may not be able to put your evidence in trial. You're going to be up against a war of attrition against you. And as Andrew Popper, in a nice book, he had a collection of materials on so-called tort reform. Imagine using the word tort reform to take away people's rights. If you heard the word civil rights reform, it's expanding, right? Civil liberties reform, expanding. That's how our language has been distorted. He put out this book in 2010, and he made it really relevant to all of us. You know, almost nothing we do every day does not have the potential of unreasonable risk by the negligence of others or the crimes of others. All life is risk, all activity is risk. You're on the highway, there are risks, but there are certain limits that others have to adhere to or they're going to be sued if we utilize the legal system in far greater numbers. The more the perpetrators have to pay, the more they internalize the cost, the more they change the design of their products or their behavior, the more they protect apartment homes in terms of security against intruders. That was a case that's at the museum now that started the whole upgrading of apartment building security, brought by one plaintiff attorney and a woman who was assaulted as she was going into her apartment because the apartment building was not secure against an intruder. And so here's the nature of tort reform, as I call it. They want to get rid of strict liability, joint and several liability, punitive damages. They want to cap pain and suffering damages. They want to get rid of a lot of class actions or make it very difficult to bring them. They want to have their own corporate definition of expert witnesses. And they're starting now to give blanket immunity from any lawsuit to certain parts of our economy. Blanket immunity. There's no end to where they're going, and less than 1% of the American people just being alert to the problem when they buttonhole their legislators, when they talk to their friends at the water cooler or their neighbors, replacing small talk with some big talk, can turn this right around. You ask the American people, do they want their day in court? Do they want to be able to sue if someone hurt them negligently or criminally? You can bet they say yes. It doesn't matter whether they're conservatives or liberals, libertarians, progressives, you name it. The genius of the system of tort law is it's so constitutionally rooted that it is available to everybody. It doesn't matter, rich, poor, minorities, majorities, gender, it doesn't matter. It's available to everyone. And that's why we can be pretty angry at a bunch of corporations and their lobbyists and their money trying to take these rights away from us and trying to repeal the American Revolution of 1776. Now, in this audience, there are two lawyers who sometimes meet for lunch, Professor Joseph Page and attorney Victor Schwartz. As you know, Professor Page was the selector and the documenter of these cases at the Tort Museum, which I hope you'll see. Tomorrow is open house for anybody who wants to come. Tell your friends, neighbors, children. There's even, on the way out, Ben & Jerry's ice cream. There's even a little presentation of dangerous toys by the late Edward Schwartz, who wrote the book, Toys That Don't Care, make parents more careful in choosing toys that don't burn and harm kids. The difference between Victor Schwartz and Joseph Page on how expansive and how restricted the law of torts should be is not minor. But the similarities are not minor either. Because when all is said and done, they're both officers of the court, they're members of the legal profession, they've both taught law, they've both written books, and they both transcend it and know that it has to be preserved. Maybe changed here and there if it flares out, has to be restored and prevented from being eroded and rolled back. I don't think Victor Schwartz even supports caps on damages, pain and suffering, even though his clients wouldn't like to hear that, which means he has a professional life of his own. He's not just an attorney for corporate clients. And that's what we need the 1 million licensed lawyers to become. They have to transcend their clients when they disagree with their clients, but they have to represent them as a matter of professional obligation. And look at the big picture, which is thou shalt not ration justice. That's the big picture. That's what it's all about. There's no freedom, no liberty without justice. The struggle of human beings for thousands of years and thousands of years in the future, if the planet survives. Nobody should ever say to themselves, I'm just a nobody. I just don't count. I just don't matter. I just don't know how to challenge injustice. That is unacceptable minimization of the full significance of human beings. Whenever people come up to me and say, oh, you're so famous, I said, who are you? And they say, I'm just a nobody. It's all I can do from not hugging them into reality. How can they ever say that about themselves? People are special because of what they do and what they advocate. And when crimes are committed and the government does not prosecute them, you go to your plaintiff's tort attorney. Most crimes of violence are also torts. And when the government's too chicken or otherwise short-budgeted, as law enforcement budgets against corporate crimes are wont to be, you've got to go to the plaintiff's lawyer. I think the law schools have got to become much more excited in their second and third year about elaborating tort law the way they elaborate property and contracts and other laws in their other courses in their second and third year. I'm glad to see Dean Fisher express his enthusiasm for that. Now it's my distinct pleasure to introduce what I think is the greatest living artist in America. Let me explain. Let me explain. Patti Smith has done it all. Watch this. I'll start with the more recent. In her book called Just Kids, it won the National Book Award. That's like winning the World Series. There are thousands of people who write nonfictions who would go through limbo and hell to win the National Book Award. She seemed to win it effortlessly. She is not only a thoughtful singer, she not only pioneered punk rock with that famous album, Horses, but she sang for a lot of progressive candidates in this country, including me, when it was very unpopular in her industry to represent anybody who took on the corporatists and big business. And she paid a price for that in terms of her career. She did not waver. So an artist with courage is a special kind of artist. Furthermore, she's a painter. Furthermore, she's a poet. During the ravaging criminal invasion of Iraq, which boomeranged everywhere, including against us, and took over 1 million Iraqi lives and blew that society apart and spread beyond the borders and sent many US soldiers to their grave and many more traumatized. In an intense evening, this is where indignation, moral indignation, properly restrained, can produce creativity. She created this song, this poem that she sang, Radio Baghdad. It's the most haunting and remarkable song you could hear in the midst of the killings that were going on. 2004, 5, 6, some Rensselaer professors put it together with a few remarks by me in an Albany church in a DVD. Just 30 minutes. It shakes you. It's art as the conveyor of the most basic values of our society. And she's come here today, her second trip to Winsted, by the way. And she's come here today with her accomplished musician daughter, Jessie, to sing 2 songs to us. And it's a wonderful way to end this convocation for the first law museum, I am told, in the world. Patti Smith.
Thank you. First, I'd like to take a page out of Ralph's book and say, I'm just a simple girl. And, but I'm really, really so happy. Jesse and I are so proud to be here today, but I'm also really happy, which I always am when I listen to Ralph speak. And all of the speakers, I learned so much today. And at 68 years old, I have vowed to myself that I am going to do my best to be a good ancestor. So, I think I have to, I'm sort of, I feel a little embarrassed to sing 2 songs because it sort of goes past the 5-minute rule. But since I've been asked to do it as a duty, I'll do my duty. And the first song is a little song, and when Ralph said, liberty lives in the heart of men and women, this is a little song about that idea, liberty living in the heart of a resilient person who is in the throes of injustice. Just a little song, and it's called Wing.
Just got a microphone for you.
No, I can sing. Is that okay? No, I'm okay. Oh, there's a mic stand? Sorry. I feel... Okay. All right. 1, 2. Is that okay? Sound okay? Okay. Wing. I was a wing in heaven blue, on the ocean, soared in the rain, and I was free. I needed nobody. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. I was a pawn, couldn't make a move, couldn't go nowhere, no future at all. Yet I was free. I needed nobody. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And if there's one thing could do for you, you'd be a wing in heaven blue. I was a vision in another eye, and I saw nothing, no future at all. Yet I was free. I needed nobody. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And if there's one thing could do for you, you'd be a wing in heaven blue. And if there's one thing could do for you, you'd be a wing this song I wrote with my late husband, Fred Smith, and I recorded it when I was about 5 or 6 months pregnant with Jessie, and I can say that she kicked mightily through it. And when I wrote the words to the song, I really felt like I understood what they meant. But then when I met Ralph and started working with him and his team, and in all the subsequent years hearing him speak, I felt these words as truly living words. The things that I have learned from him and working with him and his people have really magnified these words for me. And I never sing it, and I sing it a lot, without thinking of him. So it has a very simple chorus. Feel free to sing along, because I have heard the people of Winslet are great singers. I was dreaming, in my dreaming, well, of an aspect bright and fair, and my sleeping, it was broken, but my dream, it lingered near, in the farm of shining valleys, where the pure air rarefied, and my senses newly opened, 'cause I awakened into the cry that the people have the power to redeem the work of fools. Upon the meek, the graces shower. It's decreed, the people rule. People have the power. People have the power. Come on. The power. People have the power. Vengeful aspects became suspect and bending low as if to hear, and the armies ceased advancing because the people had their ear, and the shepherds and the soldiers, well, they lay beneath the stars, exchanging visions, laying arms to waste in the dust, in the form of shining valleys, where the pure air rarefied, and my senses newly opened, I awakened to the cry. People have the power. People have the power. People have the power. People have the power. We're there. Oh, sorry, forgot the words. Where there were deserts, I saw fountains, and like cream, the waters rise, and we strolled there together, with none to laugh or criticize. Well, and the leopard and the lamb lay together, truly bound. Well, I was hoping, in my hoping, to recall what I had found. I was dreaming, in my dreaming, God knows, a purer view. And I surrender into my sleeping. I commit my dream to you. Okay. People have the power. power to dream, to rule, to wrestle the world from fools. It's decreed, the people rule. Well, it's decreed, the people rule. Listen, I believe everything we dream can come to pass through our union. We can turn the world around, we can turn the Earth's revolution. We have the power.